First of all, welcome everybody. With God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We thank God for blessing us to be here this afternoon to speak a little on the topic of today, which is in American society, the 4th of July, that we call New Patriotism Day. And we'll explain that, and hopefully we get some benefit. You know, one of the biggest problems that we have as a people is we don't have a knowledge of who we are, ourselves, our history, our culture, etc. That's the biggest problem. See, I lived in an Italian neighborhood, and when I moved out of that neighborhood, I felt like I was an Italian. They had pizza, they had lemon ice, they had bakery. You wake up in the morning, you smell fresh smelled bread, baked bread. They had Italian schools, the Catholic schools, etc. Right? Culture. They're locked into their culture. So when they go into their community, anything in their community, they're inspired by it. And this is one of the big problems that we have. You know, me and Cookie was having breakfast last week, and a young fellow was outside, and he came over and said, "Miss, could I have $1?" Now I was walking, I had her on my arm, like helping her along. I said, "You mean to tell me you bypassed me to ask my wife for $1?" So she said something to him. How old are you? He was 19 years old. So I told him, and we told him that you need to get a job, you blah, 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 blah. So I said, "Well, do you know anything about your history as an African American?" He said, "A little bit." That's the problem. Children don't know their culture, they don't know their history. So they're lost in the world as a people. And quite naturally, society is not helping us along because they try to enhance the ignorance of who we are as a people. So many different things have put us in jail, beat us up, put us in poor neighborhoods, etc., etc. So this is what this is all about. Matter of fact, this whole room is what it's all about. Because when we come in here, we should have something in here should be able to affect our thinking. Like them sneakers. See them sneakers up there? Them are Nasir sneakers. He gave them to me a long time ago. If you go in the Bronx, I haven't been down there in a long time, but if you see them, they're hanging up on the wire. And if anybody saw the picture of the devil's advocate, right? The devil's advocate, he went up to Harlem or Bronx or wherever he went. And he went into his car and he took these sneakers out just like that, and he swung them, and then he swung them around the wire, the electric wire in the street. And then he said to the young African American kids, he said, "Here, take these." He had some more. "Take these and show your friends how to do it." He was the devil. He was the devil's advocate. So what are we responding to? We're responding to devil's influence because we don't have our own culture. That's why I put them sneakers up there, right? And that's 125th Street. This is 125th Street, right? That has an effect on, as soon as anybody step in there and see that, has an effect on them. It's an African American culture. And this is what we have to try to better understand so we can teach it. New Patriotism Day, 4th of July, Benjamin Abdullah Cultural Center, which is right here present. The 4th of July, America's 250th anniversary. And we say to America, congratulations, etc., etc., and however we want to perceive that. Frederick Douglass, powerful voice of the African American people. He said, delivered his famous speech. He said, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" That was a heavy statement, a heavy question. It's a question. What to the slave is the 4th of July? He said on July 5th, 1852, in Rochester, New York, he exposed the glaring hypocrisy of a nation celebrating liberty while enslaving millions, declaring the 4th of July is yours, not mine. Liberty, you may rejoice, I mourn. That was a heavy statement. So did he accept that idea of a 4th of July or independence? No, because why? Slaves were still being held. People wasn't slaves on plantations. They had no right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That didn't apply to them. But if you have a government and you have a constitution, if you make the statement, it should apply to everybody. So that was his statement. And then later on, in July 1977, Imam Muhammad publicly raised the American flag. So I'm in I'm in this community, and he said anybody who accept this, they could raise it also. I never raised it. I mean, he's a leader, but I didn't raise it. But I understand what he was doing today. He was doing what carrying on what Frederick Douglass started in the beginning. He said, because America is ours. These United States of America. We built it. We helped build it. We contributed to it. Our labor went into it. And you mean to tell me where are we going if we don't live in America? Nobody else opened their doors to us. How many people invited us to come back to Africa? Right? They invite us to come back to Africa to help Africa. They don't invite us to come back to Africa to help us. So we have a responsibility, right? To whether you want to raise the flag or not, but understand that the flag of these United States of America, the law under the Constitution of the United States of America, is ours as well as anybody else's. And another thing that we have to keep in mind is that these constitutional laws that was leaded by the founding fathers, these weren't their words. These were religious words. They were from the Bible. They were from the Torah. They were from the Quran. It was God that promised us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It wasn't a European that came to America, came up with these ideas. Quite nice, they was a Protestant religious group of people, but they extracted not only from the Bible, they also extracted from the Quran, and they also extracted from the Torah. One of the founding fathers had a Quran. Matter of fact, the Quran is right now in Washington, D.C., on display. What was he doing with the Quran? He was looking for guidance. What was he doing with the Bible? Looking for guidance. He was looking in Scripture. He was looking for God's Word because he knew that the only thing that would hold up is God's Word. You can't trick people, brother. You can trick people using false ideas in religion, but you can't form and fashion a democracy, brother, based on your understanding while holding slaves, while destroying the population of the Native American people. It's hypocritical, however we want to see it. And many of us have been duped. Many of us have been educated by the master, so we think like the master. But we have to come out of that thinking and come back into our culture. And once we come back into our culture, then we begin to see as an African American. Alhamdulillah. In the Holy Quran, it mentions, after you have completed your immediate tasks, still labor hard. So when we came out of slavery, we went to sleep, right? He said when we came out of slavery, we had farmland down south, right? What happened? We sold it off, or they took it back, they tricked us out, or whatever the case might be. Still, some of us still have farmland in the south right now. Once you have completed your immediate tasks, still labor hard. In other words, we cannot stop now. We can't sit down and be relaxed. Sit down, we put on some nice jazz music or some classical music or whatever the case might be, relax, go on vacation, and think that everything is all right. It's all right with Americans because this is their society. It was built for them. We labored for them. When do we labor for ourselves? And when we begin to understand and appreciate who we are, if we can do this for somebody else, what in the world can we do for ourselves collectively? I know Bakir, he always talking about collective, bringing our resources together, collective. You know, he gave an example of you buy in Philadelphia, all of them are row houses, right? If you buy up a whole block, if it's 20 houses, you buy 20 refrigerators, 20 stoves, 20 windows, 20 everything, right? And now you got that block squared where you move to the next one. You mean to tell me we can't do that? Of course we can. But we don't have the spirit to do it, and we don't have the knowledge of who we are as a people, collectively working together to do for ourselves in our lifetime. Today we are engaged in a revolution. Some of us, not all of us. Some of us are engaged in a revolution. Not the revolution of guns. We never win a revolution like that, but the revolution of the mind. See, and once you change your mind, you can change anything. Because the most powerfulest institution that ever existed is the human brain. And once we apply that to human brain, we can solve every problem that we have to solve with very little energy. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The topic, the state of African American people today and the signing of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1767. That's 250 years. Celebrate. What took place in 250 years? How many of us know? How many of us care? Right? I know because I took time to study it. I got a few history books upstairs. History books written by us and written by other folks. The history of America. We want to know what took place in 250 years. If we don't know what took place in 250 years, no wonder we drinking alcohol and smoking dope and shooting heroin and things of that nature. We trying to get out of the confusion. But once you know what took place in that history and our place in the history, then we have more strength, more spirit to not to give up, but to continue that revolution of the mind to bring about peace and tranquility for all of us in our lifetime. America's Declaration of Independence from Europe was July 4th, 1767. That was a revolution by the gun. When they saw that England was doing them a disservice, England was the father. When they saw that England was doing them a disservice, they didn't just sit around and complain. Their intentions were to break away from their father England, because England was imposing heavy tax on them. They put them in prison and beating them up, and the same kind of things that's happening here. And what did they do? They organized themselves, they got weapons, and they fought. Now, quite naturally, we're not gonna fight, but we're gonna fight with this same revolution. And if America was successful in 1767 to gain their independence from Britain, you know, Britain was one of the most powerfulest navies that existed in the history of man. And if they defeated England, what does that tell us? If we got up and persevered and start doing things, we don't have to be disrespectful or anything. Start building. Start opening up business, right? Start investing in things, right? Start doing little projects like what we're doing right here, right? Anything that we could do to advance ourselves and then have a greater appreciation for who we are. And please don't forget our young people, like that 19-year-old boy who was lost. He wanted $1. I couldn't put my hand on $1, so I gave him some change in my pocket. But he was just as lost as he could be, right here in all of this civilization. You don't find other people's children like that. You find our children out in the street like that. Alhamdulillah, God knows best. The constitutional law of the United States of America was written in 1787. They got their independence in 1776. They wrote a constitution in 1787. That was the law. They put all these beautiful wording together, you know, the benefit of man, the glorification of man. But they're only talking about their own selves. Read it. Don't take my word for it. Read it. They're only talking about themselves. This is why we have three different classes. You have the wealthy. We used to have a middle class, and the middle class took care of the poor. And the wealthy is always secure. That's Donald Trump's level. People with big money. This is why he's in office. He's taking care of the people on the top. They formulated a constitution that worked in their behalf. Alhamdulillah. It was ratified 2 years later. Ratified means that they took a vote, so it was democratic, and they conceded, okay, this is what we're gonna live by. And in that time, it was amended 27 times, and the last being the Bill of Rights. These are our rights. I got on this table over here, I got books on the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, etc. I read it. I read the Quran, I read the constitutional books, because we have to live under this law. And if you don't know your law, you're in trouble, because the police officers don't know the Constitution. They just threaten you. They'll pull up to you, brother, give me your license. You don't have to give, what did I do? Did I break any law? No, you didn't break any law, but for police security. That's not a law. Show me the code. This is the way we have to start talking. And once we start talking like that, they start backing off, right? But if we just submit, oh, hey, come here. I seen guys, brother, and I was one of them. Soon as a cop comes, right? Put your hand right on the car. He didn't even ask you to put your hand on the car. But you were fearful that he was going to shoot you, so you put your hands on the car. But if we knew the law and we stood up, alhamdulillah, the Bill of Rights, the right to have religion in America. You have the right to speak, free speech. You know, we say things that, don't speak too loud. You got the freedom. Do you know that you have the freedom to cuss a cop out? Not that we want to cuss them out, but you have the right to do that. The Supreme Court ruled on it. You can cuss him out. Get the right? Quite nicely, we ain't gonna do it because we figure we get shot. Well, listen to some of these Caucasians. Go to YouTube and listen to some of these Caucasians on how they handle their business and see how quick they back off them. Because if they don't, if they violate their rights, then their qualified immunity is violated, and you have an opportunity to sue not only them, but also sue the government. Alhamdulillah. This is what we have to start teaching. We teach religion. I'm a Muslim. Every time we have a group of Muslims together, they trying to talk Arabic, talk about something that happened during the time of Prophet Muhammad over 1,400 years ago. Your foot is not turned in the right direction. You're supposed to turn it this way or turn it. All of these crazy, not crazy things, they're good in their own place. But we need to start talking about our rights here in these United States of America so we could be successful in these United States of America. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Colonial Americans claims from England life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I have a sign right up here. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what they wanted from the New World. This is why they rebelled. They wanted life, liberty, and to pursue happiness. These were things that the slaves wasn't given. And when we understand what life means in this context, it means your natural life. What is Islam? Islam is your natural life. Islam is just not I put on a kufi, or have some long garb on, or I do this. That's not Islam. Those are rituals, brother, to prepare ourselves for our natural life. Our natural life, life is our natural life. This is what every human being wants. And also liberty. Liberty is to not be restricted. You say, you violated my liberties. Meaning what? You violated my natural life. This is what they wanted, the founding fathers. And then also happiness. The pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness means the right to own property. How many of us own property as a people? How many of us own businesses? How many of us are striving to build businesses, etc.? This is the right of every human being. Life, liberty, and to pursue happiness in the life that we live. So the Constitution is good. That's why Imam Muhammad picked it up. It's good, but it's good for only a certain amount of people. And once we apply these things, you can apply it in the context of the Constitution as written by them, or you can apply it in the context of the Holy Quran, or you can apply it in the context of the Bible or the Torah. Look at the Jews. The Jews don't care anything about what they talk about, the Independence Day and all of that stuff. They look in their Torah and they see how Moses guided them, and look how successful they are. You came up 17. Did you see all them buildings that they built? From as soon as you get off, come through that toll, all the way up, brother. Jewish buildings, Jewish businesses, etc. And quite honestly, God is the best knower. It is recorded that the first to die in the revolution was
Crispus Attucks.
Who?
Crispus Attucks.
Crispus Attucks. Who was he?
He was a black man in Boston.
He was a black man in Boston. First to die. The first one to die in the Revolutionary War was a black man in Boston, right? A black man in Boston took and put his life on the line for the benefit of the Caucasian people, forming a government that his people would not be a part of. Now, he was in the colonies. He wasn't on the plantation. My mother told us when we were young, she lived in North Carolina. She said the people in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, he said if they got out of hand, he said they would sell them to Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama. And she said that was the killing field, she called it. He said they would work you to death. So they were more obedient than the people in Alabama and Mississippi and in the deep South. He said they'd work you to death. And here's a man in the South who's undergoing that kind of torture, beatings and working to death, etc. And there's another black man up in Boston fighting for the revolution. And it shows us he wasn't a cotton picker. He was just an individual, brother, who had hope in America. And we all should have hope in America. But he was the first to die. That's a sign from God. That's definitely a sign from God to show us today. Negroes in the North and South did not have rights. He died, but he didn't have an opportunity to enjoy the rights that the Constitution gave. He was fighting for it, but he didn't have the rights. Matter of fact, even all the way up to the First World War, the First World War, they didn't have rights. America wouldn't even allow the military, black military men to fight with them. It was the French that took them, put them in their uniforms, put them in the field. And matter of fact, they fought so gallantly that they called them the Hellfighters. Yeah. They said, these Hellfighters, man, ain't never fought nobody like this. And then at the end of the war, after they defeated the Germans named them the Hellfighters. The French end up giving them French's highest award to every one of them. They put them on the front line for, I forgot how many days, but so many months or whatever the case. And they stayed on the front line without being relieved until they were relieved. It just goes to show, look at who we are. But we don't pay any attention to these kind of things. Because why? We gotta go out and pop the fingers. We gotta we gotta stay up with the latest music. We gotta stay up with the latest dress, the latest automobiles, and all the rest of these things. But when we finally realize, as every other race of people have realized, how powerful we are, we'll start building.
That's right.
As soon as we understand it, we'll start building.
That's right.
And we'll start tackling tasks that we thought that we couldn't even accomplish. And quite naturally, God knows best. I used to always think, brother, I need to go back to Africa. But then I realized, what the hell am I going back to Africa? What am I going to Africa for, right? I said, if I went back to Africa, brother, I hear even how the Africans talk about us. They talk about us just as bad as the white folks because they don't see any accomplishments, right? They said, no, I'm not going back to Africa. I'm going to fight like hell to do everything that I could right here to get as much dignity and respect as we can get as a people. And that's always been my task. I never had much, right? But what I had, that's what I utilized it for. All of these things that I put into this museum or this center, this cultural center here, right? These are collections that I had over years. Many of these books and writings and things, over years. I even got the old sports players from Jack Johnson and Joe Louis, just to show us, man, we're not just no fly-by-night Mike Tyson knock people out and just have sex with a whole lot of women. We got people who stood up with dignity,
Yep.
right? In sports, jazz, blues players and whatnot, right? Rappers, brother, right? All of these things. This is our collective. This is our property. And when we begin to realize it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us. Neither had rights. The southern blacks knew it. The northern blacks in the colonies only had an illusion. They had an illusion of freedom, etc., and equality. But the ones in the South, they knew it. You know, there's a saying that they called in our history, we all relate to it, and no disrespect because we all were slaves. But the field nigger and the house nigger, right? That's a heavy language, brother. He said, well, who is he? He's a field. How you know he a field? Look at him. You can tell he a field nigger because just look at him. Look at her. All ragged, torn up, beat up, depressed, etc. Who's a house nigga? You could tell. Okay, clean dress. He serves the master, right? He bows, he curtsies, right? He might not know how to read if you put a book in front of him, but he knows how to use the words that the master taught him to feel comfortable around. He comes, he curtsies, he knows how to serve, he puts the plates down. And so that's an illusion. The slave, the field nigger, I'm saying nigger, pardon me, but that's what they called it, field nigger. If I said field negro, it'd take the sting out, right? But it wouldn't take the meaning, it'd rob it of its meaning. But he knew who he was. And every opportunity that he got, he tried to run or he tried to do something to get his freedom. Others, they weren't too concerned with freedom because they had a place to sleep, they had food that the master put on their plate, etc. The movie that Jamie was in, Jamie,
Django?
what was it? Yeah, what is it?
Django.
Django. Boy, that was the best illustration of that situation that I ever seen. And the black man who was playing the house master, what's his name? The old man.
Morgan Freeman?
No,
Yeah.
That wasn't Morgan.
No.
that was
Samuel?
Sam Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah.
Academy Award. They should have gave him an Academy Award for that if they didn't, right? I'm pretty sure they didn't, but they should have gave it to him because he illustrated that part so thoroughly. And if you saw it, that's exactly how it was. And I listened to a lot of old folks, especially my mother. She from Columbia, South Carolina, excuse me. And she was influenced heavily by the influence of slavery, Jim Crow after. And we have to understand these things so we can be successful. The Emancipation Proclamation claiming freedom of slaves was signed in 1965 by President President Lincoln. That's the freedom. And last time we had a meeting here was Juneteenth. And Juneteenth was a celebration of freedom. Our freedom finally reached Texas, and we realized that we were free, and the people had a celebration. It's Emancipation Proclamation. What does that mean? That means legally, by legislation, we free. But are we free? That's a question we have to ask ourselves, because it's documented that we are free, and at the same time, actually it was 20 years later.
2 years later.
No, I'm on another point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
20 years later, the Berlin Center in Europe, they met to figure out how to colonize Africa. Now that's 20 years after we were emancipated from slavery. Now they colonize Africa. Now you have the French, you have the Italians, you have the English, you have the Spanish, you have all of these different European countries that colonized Europe to rob their resources. And that was up until 1960s, until they received their independence. The 1960s, the same time that the legislation was signed in the United States of America, after we had been emancipated. Took another 100 years to sign the legislation to show that we were free. This stuff had meaning if we evaluate it. And now you see the Africans, even today, they still have influence over Africa.
Yep.
Still. Why? Because of the resources. They give them money. Burkina Faso, right? This Burkina Faso flag right here, right? That bag right there, that Procasac bag right there, cocoa beans from Ghana. You know, the Europeans, they would sell the cocoa to the Europeans. The Europeans would process, for almost no money, the Europeans would process it into chocolate, package it, and sell it back to them at a tremendous profit. Burkina Faso, he said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We keeping our own cocoa. We processing our own, and then we'll sell them that at a higher price. That's a man that woke up, a young 40-year-old man. He woke up. He understood who he was. He woke up, and then he said, we will not stop now. Now they're building roads, they're building farms, they letting prisoners out of the prison and putting them to work in the farm. They're not just sitting like we house our prisoners, just put them in a cell and let them stay there for 20 years. He put them in the field to go to work for their own people. This is the spirit that we have to develop as a result. Now some of us is gonna accept it, and most of us are not. But it's only a few that ever came to the front to make changes.
Right.
Never was the many. And then in time, the people begin to understand exactly what life is all about. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Constitution of the United States, its law, and the civil rights for Americans, African slaves happened 175 years later. 175 years later. And today, in 2026, the use of the word nigger is still common. Not only with Caucasians, with ourselves. You turn on the television, you know, that's all they say is nigger, 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 amongst ourselves. So what kind of psychological effect does that have? It's the same psychological effect as that slave masters had on the plantation. When he said nigger, the white man, it was demeaning. When we say it today, it's still demeaning. He said he's a good nigger. Ain't no such thing as a good nigger. There's no such thing as that. Because the psychological effect that that word has on an individual, it keeps them from growth and development. A nigger means just that, negative. Psychologically, it might be hip in the hip hop world. You're my nigga. You know, all the way they changed it. And if you say nigger, that's one thing. That's the meaning. But if you say nigga, that's cool. That's the craziest thing I ever heard in my life, right? But this is how our minds have been manipulated over time. And now we see ourselves in a position that I know we're struggling to get out because we have a monster in office. And once you see a monster, brother, you know now, and we understand that. And I think that's a blessing from God. He allowed us to see it.
Yep.
But like Bakir always said, you can take advantage of that monster because the monster is offering a lot of things that the Negro can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And if we wake up and understand, we jump on board and get those benefits also. It's all about investment. And if we invest in, we got a pool of money to invest. We don't have to invest in that. We invest in our own self. We get the benefits of what the big market people get, big Wall Street people get, etc. And God knows best. Freedom belongs to God only. It is not for man to give man the illusion of something that he does not control. Faith is very important. I don't care what religion you are, what religion you are. If you're a Jew, a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian, and you believe in God, but believe me, that's sufficient. Because only God will save us. Man can't save us. We run around looking for all these politicians and all the rest of these. They can't save us. Only God. Faith. Question. Does America's independence carry the same weight for its former African slaves? Or is it just a day off from work?
Good question.
I mean, we have to evaluate that on our own. Because if you say that we have independence, American independence after 250 years, go through some of our communities.
Yeah, right.
Some of us are able to get out, but our situation is no better. We might be able to get out of what we call the hood, but we don't live that kind of life where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is, we wake up every morning and that's in our focus, in our vision. We struggle like hell. A white man wake up that's conscious, a conscious white. All white folks are not conscious. He wake up and he feels superior when he wakes up. As soon as he get out of the bed, he feel like a superior being. Why? Because he's an American. I live under this Constitution. This belongs to me. Look how they talk to us sometimes, brothers, like we subjects, right? Talk back the same way they talk back to you, and I guarantee you, brother, they get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? We're the one that's digging them up because we don't represent. We have to represent ourselves. And just a few more points, or one more point, and we conclude. As Muslims, whose law is the Holy Quran and the life of Prophet Muhammad, Muslims living in America can live under the Constitution because the law, as it is written, does not conflict. We opened a mosque in Mount Vernon called Masjid Yusuf Shah, and we had the right to do that. And that was a time when the terrorist people was coming from other countries. Why? We under the Constitution. But if we didn't have the Constitution, you couldn't open no mosque. Freedom of religion. We have freedom of religion. I can go over to City Hall and tell the mayor. I said, Mayor, you ain't worth 40 cents, right? You can't do that in a communist country, right? They'll lock you up. Why could I do it? I have freedom of speech. That's guaranteed. They say it's guaranteed. Utilize it in the best way. So Islam, the law of Islam, or the United States of America, does not conflict with the law of the Constitution of the United States of America. And I believe that's what Imam Warthi Muhammad was referring to when he picked up the flag. We live in this country, we have a share of it, we have a right to everything that exists in this country, and we're going forward. Alhamdulillah. And concluding,
You can say it.
No, it's okay.
Oh.
I'm gonna kiss my baby. Thank you.
how many of us know what the 13th Amendment, I know you know, Vincent.
No, I'll keep my mouth. I won't say nothing.
No, go ahead.
It's the freedom for slaves.
13th.
The 13th.
The 13th Amendment, right. The freedom of the slave. But there's another component in there that says that you have the freedom, but if you are arrested and put in jail, you lose that freedom. And we can use you for labor. And what is labor? And that was right after we were free. And what is labor? Plantation life. Bob worked in a prison. He works in a jail, but in a prison where they manufacture. What is the percentage of African Americans that's in prison? We are 13% of the population of the United States of America. 40% of the prison population. 13th Amendment. And an individual who's in prison, if it's a manufacturing prison, he's on a plantation. And I got the 13th Amendment right over here. I made a copy of it. Right over here. If anyone want to read it right there. And I also have the police badge from the slave patrol.
They also had sundown laws, so that if you were outside in the street at sundown, that was enough to be arrested.
Enough to be arrested, enough to put in prison, and enough to be put on a labor camp that made.
Why you think your parents told you to be in before dawn?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Exactly.
And if
Yeah,
it
that-
wasn't, you in trouble.
And that was conditioned from the plantation.
Yeah.
So, this is where we at. Know your rights. Bang. We conclude as usual with the beating of the drum all the way back to the motherland.